right now on Higher Journeys Radio with Alexis Brooks. Is reality a simulation, a construct designed by some other superintelligence that has the ability to lock us into a matrix-like environment? Or nothing more than a program that we collectively agree to keep running? What if it's both? These are among the questions I posed to quantum researcher, speaker, and author Sonia Barrett. Some of what she had to say may surprise you, raise an eyebrow or two, or make you say, now I understand. Either way, Sonia sheds light on this elusive but intriguing topic like none other. Have a listen. Sonia, you've been on this journey of exploring reality from its underbelly, its not so obvious substructure for many years now. And you've covered a multitude of intriguing topics throughout this journey that you've shared with so many of us. But I have to admit, I was not aware that you had done so much work in the area that we're going to be discussing today. And that's the idea that we are living in a simulated reality, a virtual construct of sorts. And I'm really excited that we'll be covering this on today's show because you've got some intriguing ideas about just how all this stuff works. So let's dive in, shall we?
Sure.
All right, let's do it. First, I want to ask you, let's begin at the beginning, if we may. Where did this sense that you needed to investigate this model of reality, this simulation, if you will, where did this come for you? Was there an acute trigger or something else?
No, I don't think it was a trigger per se. I think that this all came out of just my quest to understand this idea, this thing we call life. That's really where it all began. And as I've gone along, different aspects of it just keeps unfolding and showing itself to me. And it's all based on each new progression, each new level of awareness that I enter. Mm-hmm. And the fact that I think one of the things too is the fact that I don't have any set constructs of what reality should be, can be, will be. I don't have it in a box. And so I think that allows me to see all of these potentials. And,
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Without we always say think out of the box, and my husband and I like to say there really is no box. So
Exactly.
without the constraints, we can kind of maybe be guided toward what we're really looking at here. And you really feel that we may indeed be living in what you call the default program, and I do want to get into that. But let's bring in a couple of names, if I may. This idea that we're living in a simulated reality is now being readily discussed. I know in what I'll call conventional scientific circles. You've got futurists like Elon Musk, who says, in fact, that I think I'm quoting here, there's a 1 in billions chance that we're not living in a simulated or a simulation created by a super intelligence. So here's my question. If that's so, if it's being created by a super intelligence, assuming there is this other, who or what is doing the creating? And I know I'm diving right in here, but
that's
just a small question.
I know. Well, the thing is, it's always this sort of which came first, the chicken or the
Right.
egg. And I think what makes it challenging, yes, we can answer that on several levels. We can answer that from the perspective of, yes, there is a sort of a pyramidal or hierarchical system, and that does exist, and we can compare that to our corporate structure. There's always these different levels up, and in looking at it that way, what I'm saying is there are different levels of existence where there are those who are more aware of the possibilities in terms of science. They're engineers or architects, just like we have here. They're scientists. So we're looking at these structures of different realms and different potentials where these beings have that kind of capability. And what we're looking at is really ultimate technology. And I think we need to step back and really look at that word again, because this is what makes people have such a difficult time, I think, in wrapping their minds around some of this. I refer to much of anything, any kind of creation, as some sort of high level technology.
Mm-hmm.
One, we have to go back to the fact that the word techno really means art, and I think in Greek, logos, and I talked about it in my first book, The Holographic Canvas.
Mm-hmm.
So we're looking at art, knowledge, and art is about what? It's about creating. It's about designing. It's about anything that you can bring forth, whether it be on paper, a form, anything at all. So we're talking about just designing, creating from the imagination, period.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Right? So when we wrap our minds around that, what we're looking at are just different levels of beings, of existence, where they have a more, and I'm selective of the words I'm using, because I don't really like using better or greater,
Mm-hmm.
in the sense of making us less than. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is these are forces or beings that have aware of their mastership of being able to create, to bring about, whether it be universe, a simulation of a universe, or the idea of a universe, or anything at all. On our level, we are creating very similar, but on a smaller scale of things. And this is what we get excited about in terms of our technology and our scientific discoveries and our scientists and all of that, on a minuscule level. So there's just these many different levels that are more expansive. What we are dealing with is also coming into our greater levels of awareness. And those greater levels of awareness is what pushing us, the human race, forward in terms of these new technological discoveries, from the body to creating, holographic, what do we call holographic designs now, holographic
Mm-hmm.
technology. So we see that on this minuscule scale. So figure if one's awareness, one's consciousness becomes so much larger than that. You're taking some of these same models, and you're then able to use that same model, because of your awareness and understanding and acceptance of who you are, to be able to create from your imagination on a much larger scale. Does
Mm-hmm.
that all make sense?
Absolutely, it does. And as you're describing the scenario, I keep thinking. I think I've heard this analogy before, sort of a nesting of universes. Well, even the Russian dolls, the nested dolls that we see,
Exactly.
and or peeling back layers of an onion, really infinite layers, and each
That's
layer we look at it sort of hierarchically. And I know what you're saying, and I respect the fact that you're resisting using a hierarchical model, but I think of levels of advancement,
right.
that we're all, as long as we're in movement, in motion with that. So what I guess what you're alluding to, tell me if I'm correct, is that what Elon Musk calls the super intelligence, those are the beings that you're speaking of. I'm assuming
Right,
that.
right. What we refer to as, we look at as super intelligence. And one of the reasons why I'm so selective about the words that we
Mm,
choose is because we are used to being this idea of being less
yes.
than, and our capabilities to be less than, and everything that we've been sort of programmed to believe is reduces us and our abilities. And so, in order to begin to open up our minds more and to also expand our perception, we have to begin to leave that space
Absolutely.
of that kind of thinking. And
Hmm.
so I put it in perspective, in that manner, so that you don't see anything as greater than you,
Hmm.
but instead you're looking at the level of advancement and awareness
Hmm.
that might exist in that particular frame of reference, those beings or realms.
Right. I understand exactly what you're saying. And, I thought about whether I wanted to bring this little epiphany up to you today or not. And I think I'm going to. I'm going to do it right now. We're going to dive right in here. I was listening to some of what you had to say. You've done, as I've said, many, what I didn't realize, many talks on this very subject. And really all bets are off when it comes to reality as we understand it, including the idea of time and measurement, including the concept of being of less than or greater than, and where we fit in that construct. And here's something that came to me, Sonia, in terms of that measurement. I think of a ruler. A ruler, when we think of a ruler as a form of measurement, 12 in the U.S., 12 inches represents a foot-long ruler. But when you think of the word, let's see if I can unravel this. Looking at the etymology of this whole thing, what else does a ruler represent? Something that governs over something else, a body. Do you see what I'm saying? So ruler is a
absolutely.
measurement, but ruler is also something that is an authority over, greater than, and keeps a body of people, as an example, in line. I hope I'm not bringing this up too soon, but I think it's relevant to what you're saying, because it seems like the simulation is being predicated on measurement and a finite form of living.
Well, yes.
Do you know what I'm saying there? I think it's a clue in that word ruler. Measurement, linear.
Absolutely. Well, absolutely. And yet you're right. Yeah, there is that idea of ruler, and that doesn't necessarily mean just an individual per se, but ruled by time, ruled
Yes.
by measurement,
Yes.
ruled by a set construct, ruled by a set idea that then establishes a set perception, a prescribed perception of reality. That's really what we're dealing with. And the idea of time, I like to point this out too, because many times people start to understand some of this, but then they go into disliking, or time doesn't exist. And then time becomes this really, in people's minds, negative, for lack of a better word, this very negative concept. No. What we have is, in order to experience this particular construct, this particular idea, this particular concept of reality. Yes, I use words specifically because it's specific to what I'm wanting to establish. In order to experience this specific idea of reality, this idea of time had to exist. And so what we're dealing with is this idea of captured moments. It's the only way that we could explore any kind of journeying experience here, is to have this whole idea of time, which is just these measured measured concepts or constructs. And we know that time is based on what we would calculate as distance. All of that, is related, because that's how we measure anything to get from point A to point B, or A to Z. There is everything in between, and the rate of travel at which that is being measured in order to get from one point to the next. And of course, the more that time in between is reduced for anything, we are what? If we're driving really fast on the freeway, it was supposed to take us 2 hours to get someplace, and depending on the speed that we're traveling, it could reduce it to an hour and a half or less. Right. So we can see in there how really just in that little bit there is this pliability.
Absolutely. Malleability, yes.
Yeah, with this concept of time. However, what we have is we are locked in to a particular perception of time as something that we run out of. Now that goes into like just a whole other area.
Yeah.
But I like to present that because we need to see how what we know about, or what we have perceived about reality and what we've been programmed with, is that if things run out, that's why we're always on the chase, because we're going to run out of time, we're going to run out of money. What's the other thing I always say? Time, money, and I can't believe I can't remember the other word. But
Uh,
we talk about spending our life.
mhm.
I like people to look at all of that. If everybody's always on a race to do things by a certain time, meaning our lives. Now I'm talking on the bigger scale, because we're
Mhm.
going to run out. So we're programmed with this idea that we only have so much of this thing we call time allotted to us, right? And that's very important to recognize that it is more of a program that your brain is operating by, because this is the operating system. And so everything that you see and experience supports that program, that prescribed belief that
Mhm.
time is something that you run out of, and you only individually, we only have so much of
Right.
it, and we perceive money basically and all of that the same way. So we're always running out of something.
Right. I
It,
get you. And this is why I just have to reiterate, this is what I mean when I say it seems we are ruled by measurement.
right,
Ruler.
and it is, which we count.
Right.
We're ruled by it, and so we can't run out of numbers. That was a workshop that I had done where we talked about that. It was a workshop on money, to really show the correlation with all of this. But
Mhm.
you really can't. You can't run out of numbers. But what we have in our reality is prescribed and agreed on, finite numbers, finite constructs when it comes to our lifespan, when it comes to the idea of money, and pretty much anything else. All right, so let me jump further with this. Now, the idea of numbers, even though I say we can't run out of numbers, because you can't. Um, Patterns, right? Everything that we see, a chair, a book, our bodies, everything is a has a quantitative value to it. What do I mean by that? It means that it is all held together by a specific pattern, which means that that pattern has a specific frequency to it,
Mhm.
and that is means it is measurable. So it's a measurable. So here's numbers again involved. It is a that measurable frequency that is making a chair, and a body, and a tree.
Mhm.
There is it doesn't mean that is finite. It doesn't mean that. What it means is everything is represented in as a pattern that has its own value, quantitative value to it. You have to have a sub, which is what quantum physics is, quantum packets of energy.
Mhm.
So you have a specific amount of something, that is forming a particular pattern, so that that pattern represents that thing that we identify in our construct of reality. That's one reason why, yes, we live in a space, or we've been operating in a space, or our consciousness have been focused in a space that is based on this quantitative value of everything.
Mhm.
Uh, Hence our money, and hence time, and all the things that we're programmed to
Mhm.
believe that we run out of, but we really don't. It's perception that allows a finite experience as opposed to infinite experience.
So would it, excuse me. So would it be fair to say, Sonia, that if we were to rip away that, or change the formula, maybe is what I want to say, of that value, that we would be in effect ripping up the simulation, creating another? I guess I'm trying to first. I guess I'm trying to establish how all of this lends credence to the idea that A, we are living in a simulation, and how
Okay.
malleable, how
Mm-hmm.
plastic. I mean, so many people are familiar with the work of Michael Talbot, Holographic Universe, of which I know
Mm-hmm.
you're familiar with. And the one thing that he said to me that spoke to me, that resonated so much, was this idea of the plasticity of reality.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact
Correct.
that we can just rip up, if we so
Mm-hmm.
choose, one version and create another.
Absolutely. We're doing it all the time. See, here's the thing. We're doing it all the time. But um, in terms of the idea of a simulation, let's look also at, okay, as we're talking about a simulation, which that means that we're in some sort of construct
That's not
that is
organic. That
that
has a synthetic.
exactly.
Okay.
Okay, so which everything is light. So let's also remember that, because we can't say simulation without approaching the idea of, a hologram at the same time. And it's taking all of that and not fragmenting, not making them so separate and different, because we're talking about a light construct to some degree. So we're in this simulation, which is really this almost like a womb, for lack of a better word,
Mm-hmm.
that you're in, that is based on a specific story, a specific idea that will happen in there, which means a specific way that everything will unfold in that particular construct that we're calling a simulation, right? A specific world, like the planet itself.
Mm-hmm.
That's a simulation too. But we're on this planet, and what do we have to have? We have to have oxygen. We have to have these different kinds of gases on this planet to what make everything grow, and for what we call human beings to exist here. Well, these are the rules and the laws of the simulation.
Of the simulation. Okay.
Absolutely. So, based on the rules and the laws of the simulation, everything in it is operating based on upholding the rules of the simulation. Now, if the rules in the simulation changes on a bigger scale, if the rules of the simulation changes, then that's obviously the simulation itself changes. Everything is really pliable and adjusting according to the individual and
Mm.
according to the collective, the collective, in the sense of where the collective understanding might be collective awareness, even though it is not contingent. I must say this part. It is not contingent. Evolution for an individual is not contingent on a group. And that is a misconception. That is something that is pushed with the New Age movement, that we sort of have to move in this Borg-like thing
Mm.
together,
Yes.
and that is not so. However, in the simulation is based, yes, on a sort of a group agreement,
Agreement. Yes.
belief system held in place, but the individual can shift away. And if the individual starts to shift in their own awareness, it just means that you are shifting into different realms of, yet still another aspect or game of
Okay,
potentiality.
so I want to stop you there because that you said a whole lot there, and now we're getting to the real juice of it because I think this is really where people are kind of finding an affinity toward this idea. Because look, people know things are nuts. However you define nuts, we're living in it right now. The mad world, the world of insanity. And so I think a lot of people suddenly are thinking if it's a simulation, it would figure. So the question is, how do I escape it? So there's a couple of
Mm-hmm,
points that I just want to bring up to you,
mm-hmm,
or questions that I'd like to have you elaborate on because I think you're getting there. The idea, because I've heard you say that our reality will literally be shaped by our perception of it. So,
mm-hmm.
on some level, it seems as if we're either the co creators of the simulation or at least helping to keep the simulation alive, both individually and collectively. And that's point one. But point two is if we think of this simulation as an all encompassing, all pervading environment in which the masses live, move, and have their being, would it be fair to say that absolutely everyone is in it on one level or another? Or are there some who do not live within it? And it seems like you may have answered my question already by what you just said, that there's some people that may not be living within it. But let me have you elaborate on that.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. Here's what I've learned, and is this idea of escaping. See, the
Mm,
idea of people wanting to escape
yeah,
just actually puts you right in the space that you don't want to be.
agreed.
Because it's not about escaping. There's nothing to escape. This is a shift in understanding. This is a shift in awareness. So it's not about escaping. It's also in terms of we know, who's in the simulation, who is not. When the more that we understand our pliability or our mastership, is the more that you are in it and you are not. You
Mm-hmm.
are anywhere and you are not. So it's not this sense of stuck in this concept, this simulation, because that's kind of what we people get in their minds. Like you're in it. Oh, how do I escape the matrix?
Right. Yeah.
And it has nothing to do with that. It is about your own letting go and realizing that there are no limits. The simulation has no boundaries really on anybody or anything. It is there and it is held in place by the collective limiting understanding. However, as the individual, you can be in it and not of it. But while you are understanding the beauty of it, which I know for some people is difficult to wrap their mind around that part, but this is what I've learned is I must fall in love with this idea, this game.
Mm-hmm.
That's what lets me move in and out beyond whatever, because I am not restricted by my dislike
Right.
or fear of it and wanting to escape. That is what creates these boundaries, because you're saying, I don't like it, I don't like you, I got to get out of here. And the more you say that, is the more this thing seems to freeze. Your mind puts it into this crystal, like crystallizes it and puts bars around it, because
Mm-hmm.
since you need to escape something, that means there has to be bars there. So then your mind builds this prison to some degree. So we it's interesting how we are having this experience, and it goes back to the wave and particle dance. We are appearing and disappearing all the time.
All the time.
Everything
Right.
is form and formless. Everything is wave and particle. And if we remember that, we'll start understanding more about the fact that there really are no boundaries here. It's our
Right.
perception, our
Abs.
minds, our beliefs that are creating these illusory boundaries for not again, do not then take this and turn it into again a negative, for the purpose of experiencing the human experience, being a human being. And when you've done enough of that, and you're not mad at it and you don't dislike it, but now you go, aha, I get
I
it,
get it.
this
Right.
is
Right.
funny, okay, I get it, okay, so now
Mm-hmm.
it can't hold you, right? Because now you figured it out. So now what you see is, oh, okay, all right, so now I'm like removing a lot of the programs that had to be in me. I had to be all wired up to this thing in order to experience it. So now I'm having to, gradually the layers are falling off, and the more I allow the layers to fall off that made me think I was imprisoned, the more possibilities I get to see.
I love
Does that
it.
make sense?
Absolutely makes sense. I hope it's making sense to the audience. I have a feeling they're getting into it as well. Such I think this is great advice, Sonia, and I think it takes a bit of retreating from the dialogue, whether it's your own inner dialogue based on what you have been indoctrinated into or those of others, to just observe. And that's why I say the idea of contemplation, exploration in a sovereign way will really, I think, kind of unfurl, I like to say, these ideas that the only thing that's really holding the simulation in place is our perception of it.
That's it.
And I love the way you say I always say we are in this world, but not of it. Meaning
Mhm.
that no matter what I see, and I just think that there's some people that know that instinctively and others that may never, at least not in this incarnation. But it seems to be very natural. And it almost seems like, how exciting actually that
It is
you
very
really,
exciting.
it is quite exciting because it says I really have the ability to, just by a shift of focus, can change the entire dynamic of my life, what I see and experience from moment to moment.
Absolutely.
So I think that's great. Yeah.
It is awesome, and to realize also that as the individual, or what appears to be the individual, you represent the whole. So this is why it's okay. It doesn't have to be what we call the group mind, because each one of us is an aspect of the nameless, the formless, the unlimited, that which is. We are that anyway. And so as an individual, you represent the whole, just, the illusion of being
A
fragmented.
fuzzier version, I like to
Eh,
say. Yeah.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And this allows you then to be okay with journeying on your own, in the sense of exploring and expanding beyond any construct that an organization may present to you. And this is where religion and many of these other organized concepts come in. They present people with a packaged version of what is they can what believe in, what is acceptable. Even scientists sometimes do that. They do that too. Well, no, that's not possible. It can only do this. And when you start realizing that, no, everything is possible. You can't say everything is possible and then go back to limiting it to only these things that you're comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
You can let go, and you will then begin to see and experience more. Sure, your life will change in ways that you probably have no idea that it will, but what you have to remember is that the life that we live in every moment is based on our belief systems and perceptions that have been in place for a while. So sometimes we may find that our lives shift, meaning, it could be that you even physically move from where you live, or certain people that you were in communication with, gradually they're not there anymore, because our lives in the moment are built on the understanding, the belief systems, and the perceptions by which we have been operating. That's the foundation upon which we are experiencing our life always. So I like to remind people of that.
Beautiful. Let's go back to this idea, Sonia, that I love the analogy. I actually have a set of Russian dolls upstairs in my what I call the doll room. This idea is so potent for me because I think it really does draw a great picture of what may be going on. Going back to this idea that there may be some, whether it be formless or not, some super computer, some super being that may be creating the simulation that we're moving through. But in the idea that universes possibly may be nested infinitely, and you bring up this idea of our being having the sense that we're less than, and some greater being is creating the reality that we're living in. Toss that for a minute. Let's think about the idea that could we be designing a simulation for that next level? I'm tempted to say beneath us, but I'm not. We're so habituated toward this hierarchy, right? But I guess what I'm asking is to forget the hierarchical aspect.
Well, we
Are
designed
we
this one.
creating, okay, but are we
Hmm.
creating a universe for perhaps another life form?
Yeah, well, that's just it, though. Even to say that they're super beings, that's still you. You just
Right.
reduced yourself to be here into your own game.
Hmm.
And so you're constantly, case in point, even if we are doing that, Alexis, people don't get that that's what they're doing. What do you think is happening with artificial intelligence, with
Ah,
robots? What do you think we're doing? We're doing the same thing, and that is simply pushing the human race to move into a more expansive level of possibility, to move into our superhuman selves. And most people are pushing more of the fear with it. But that's what I mean by, if even when we are doing that, people don't know they're doing that. So now it seems like it's coming at them. We're scared of it. Well, that's why human beings are creating that stuff, because we are always wanting to aim at creating, duplicating, or replicating the construct of this and our own existence and our own vehicles and this whole idea. And that's what they're doing. That stuff is moving in place. They're going to be moving around, walking around, doing whatever
hmm.
they're doing, like human beings. And we have to understand that this is not something to be feared, but this is something that you look at and you go, okay, game on, game on. I need to activate myself like right now. Because guess what? I've been saying this forever. This body is not just, it's not turned on. For most people, it's just not turned on. It's on auto. So you've been operating as automatic human beings. The second part of it that I would like to remind people of, I'm often doing that, is when we talk about they're going to take over, and you're worried that it's going to reduce you, or they're going to be in charge of you. Who is you that you're referring to? You people have taken the totality of who they are and summarized it as this body and this human experience. This is why there's so much fear that this thing, something is going to come and take over, because you've reduced yourself. Nobody's reduced you. You've reduced yourself to this body and this mind and this character that you play. This identity is all of who you think you are, even though intellectually you have people that go, oh no, your spirit's having a human experience. But then over here, you're like all stressed out that they're going to come and take over. I mean, so looking at that and realizing, wait a second, this is not the totality of who I am. What I am cannot be contained in a body. It cannot be contained in any vessel.
Right.
However, it has the ability to come in, not the totality of who it is, but to be able to come into these sensory systems that we call a body. These sensory systems, these machines, then these organic machines, that allow the feelings, the emotions, the experiencing. That's why it's designed like that. When they try to open it and check it out, it's designed in that way so we can process the experience here, including the gaseous laws and everything else. This body is designed for that, but it is not the totality of who you are.
Right.
Who you are is much more vast, and has the ability to create beyond this construct.
Okay. You said a lot there, so I want to go back a little bit. Now, what you're alluding to, Sunny, and I think you've been very articulate in this idea of how to view this future, if you will, or really the now that we're heading, barreling down the path of artificial intelligence. And I'm glad you brought that up, because this is on the minds and lips of many people today. I, in fact, have had discussions with some of my guests on, call it the agenda of AI, I suppose, and again, we may differ here a little bit, but I understand where you're coming from. I have always said that we are, you speak of technology in the broadest sense, that we are technological beings, meaning that we have an inner technology that has been dormant and atrophied for so long. And that my feeling is that this push toward artificial intelligence, as it's been articulated to us, may on some level, unbeknownst to those that are trying to push it on us, may be trying to push us to access this inner technology rather
Right,
than.
that's what I'm saying.
Okay,
That's
I want to make sure that we're.
no, that's what I'm
because
saying.
because
It's
because I do feel that there are those that do not have the organic human interest in mind when developing some of the advent of artificial
absolutely.
intelligence. So I think we need to be. I just want to be clear with
Yeah,
with
and
that. Yeah.
that's a given though. That's part of the game. You have to have opposition.
Right.
So that's what
Right.
pushes us
I
is
agree.
it's propulsion. But no, that's exactly the point I'm making, is that this is an opportunity for
Mm.
us to get our stuff together and turn yourself on. And the
Mm-hmm.
only way to reactivate yourself and to basically it's helping to push the human race forward, is to come into a realization and an awareness, and not a fear, but to understand more again about this mechanism, this technology, and how it is actually allowing us to experience this reality that we are all hooked on, addicted to, and
Addicted
we're
to, for sure. Yes.
yeah, and comfortable with, and it is wonderful. I love it. I like Earth life. I think it's amazing. I love the human experience,
Hmm.
but I know that I am so much more. And the more that you know that you're so much more, is the more you love this thing, this place,
Yes.
and the experience, and the more you will begin to use the information that they are sharing about technology, about these AI, about robotics, this information about algorithms. Now everybody knows that word. About all of these pieces, these components, how they're networking together, how the AIs network, they all network together, and how they're communicating. You start using that information, and you see yourself and begin to see the human race and the design of this system, because I'm telling you, it is a replication of what got you here and how this
Interesting.
thing is set up. And you have
Okay.
to begin to see more and understand that. Otherwise, what you're going to have is just fear, but you
Yeah.
won't see. They're giving you the science to the formula that makes this thing run in the first place.
So you're saying that there is a purpose in why this AI culture, be again beyond those that may be the biggest proponents of it. I want to stress that because I have a feeling, again, looking at this entire experience as a game, and we being the avatars, whether we're the avatars that are playing the meek, innocent role, or the avatars that are playing the rulers, they all have a purpose that is designed to give the individual the opportunity to see the broader picture. Yes?
Yes, everything.
I've been
Here's
saying
the
that for
thing.
a long time, and a lot
Ev-
of people have
yeah,
disagreed with me. And I'm like,
everything must be experienced. This is
yeah.
what I find so fascinating, is this contradiction that we have.
Mm,
You will go, oh, everything is everything. Well, then if everything exists and everything is a possibility, that means everything exists
is
and everything
right.
is a possibility. And what we are dealing with right now with this idea of artificial intelligence is just another piece in the everything that is, and everything as a possibility. And that's the possibility that is happening now. Now,
Hmm.
the other aspect that we need to also recognize is that we are everybody is most comfortable with the idea of reality that they encountered when they first got here. When you were born, as you grew up, we hear and see a certain we have a certain perception of reality, and that carries you through. And we all fight to hold on to that. When something changes, we are so upset about it.
Hmm.
But you don't realize that the only thing that you know is the reality that you experienced when you got here, and that is where you start your human journey from. Everything else is hearsay and history and information that has been handed to you.
That's right.
Now, with that said, you don't remember what human beings were like before. We have gone so far away from potentially what we were, and so nobody really remembers that. And so what we do is we fight for the version that we know about.
Right.
Now
When
we
if
are
I
returning.
just want to
Go
ask a
ahead.
question. When you say before the individual came into this earthly incarnation,
Before the individual came into this earthly incarnation, every new person that is born, that's they pick up from right there the day they came
hmm,
out. And reality is there. That is the truth of reality moving forward. They don't know anything about no rotary phones like we do. That's something that we will tell them about using a rotary phone, or whatever some of the other stuff is. Just like we heard about, the horse and buggy, or the first car, or winding, starting the car in the front, winding up in the front. We've heard of that stuff. There are things that we just have not heard about because it's so lost that nobody remembers that.
yeah.
What my point is that we are not what we so think we are. We don't know what we were in the very beginning of that potential of human existence. Were they superhumans? Were they much more? This is the question you have to ask yourself. And so we don't get stuck fighting for a version of reality that you don't realize you're only fighting for it because that is the familiar, and
Because
that
it's
is what
relative. Right.
exactly, and that's
Right.
what we've been told by pictures. Well, okay, real quickly, my other thing I like to remind people of is that you only know about the world based on what? Images presented to you, pictures, and what else is there? Pictures, images, and
Words.
the videos and
And
words.
words, language, which is very
Right.
powerful.
Well,
Absolutely. And
well,
perceived definition of what words you're hearing. Yeah.
right. And
Yeah.
so that is presented to us, and then we don't know what India or Amsterdam looks like until you get there. But
Right.
all you know about the world is what you are experiencing in the moment. And you know, I am not making this up, because that's all you know. But the television, the media, everything, movies, it brings a concept of the world to the mind.
That's right.
That's all that happens.
Hmm.
I Those things for me were incredibly important to me, really seeing more about, wow, this is amazing. So all I know really is what's happening right now in this moment. That's all you know.
That's all you know for sure. Well, this gets us into this idea of belief. And again, it's amazing how you and I were talking offline and talking about how in our journeys we've had these epiphanies out of context, no books, no workshops, no you long before YouTube. And then you'll hear these things that you had been thinking about years ago. One of them for me is belief versus knowing. I don't know when this concept came to mind. I don't believe it came from any source outside of myself, a book, for instance. But the idea that belief, I think somebody has this term, there's so many now, belief is the enemy of knowing. These are concepts that have been so familiar to me really since I believe I was a child. Something's wrong with it. To believe, belie. And I'm going to lose my train of thought because I'm digressing way too much. Here I go.
You
I know
said
you do.
belief versus knowing,
Right,
and
but
and the fact that you and I, the similarities with not
yeah, but it
having
was
dealt with books.
piggybacking on a point you were making.
Oh,
But in terms of, I think generally what you were talking about is this idea that we base our worldview essentially on what we believe, what has been a part of our pictorial, our experience. Anything outside of that is, well, I guess it would just be a belief or non-existent at all.
yeah.
But one quick point, and I want to shoot it right back over to you. You obviously, I know the point that you're making, Sonia, in terms of this is generally the experience of the masses, but then you've got these exceptions that I think are also worth bringing in. We've got all these labels, right? New humans, star children, star seeds, whatever you want to call them. This sort of new breed of species
Hmm.
that are falling outside of that framework, where they are bringing in memories of realities that existed prior to them coming into this incarnation. And I
And
find
that's
that very
always been
interesting. Yeah.
But that's always been happening, though. See, this is
Mm.
the thing. All that stuff. It's always been happening. It's always been happening. The thing is, what we know, what we get exposed to, what we get to hear about, because of the time that we're living in. Obviously, we're living in a very transitional period, a very, should I say, collectively evolutionary period, right? And I
Hmm.
know we didn't talk about the default program, but
I want you to. We're going to touch on that before we.
based on this default evolution, that I look at, uh, yes, these things are showing up more. They appear to be showing up more,
Mhm.
but we've always had that. I came in different. You came in different. There's a lot of people that came in. When
Sure.
I say different, you come in with a level of awareness, and because the human race, it is changing. There is that potential there for different levels of change, different kinds of changes to the human blueprint. yes, we are seeing some of these things. I don't give anything any name, because it just puts you in
It can be
another bucket.
dangerous. That's right.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and then egos get lost in it. They're indigo, they're this, they're that,
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
and then you just end up right back in the box, the same box that you're trying to get out of. And I look at expansion. I look at just allowing myself without any restrictions, because if I say I'm this thing. Now I need to operate within some sort of
Hmm.
framework as it relates to what an indigo is, or whatever some of the other categories are. You don't realize that's what you're doing, but now you need to meet these guidelines of what that is. And then it limits you, because now somebody will say, oh, well, that's not what an indigo is.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, no, he or she is not an indigo.
Right.
Because now you have a prescribed idea
Hmm.
of what fits into that box.
No, I'm with you. And my audience knows I always say I loathe labels, loathe, because when you have, when you start to use words, and this is part of the simulation, I would dare say, that words immediately trigger a picture, and a behavior and a stigma. So we have to be very careful. Oftentimes, or I should say, when we're talking about concepts, it's very difficult to not use a label, but I always use the contingency, or preface by saying, let's not get too locked into what that means based on how somebody defined it. So we do have to be careful there. But to the point, getting back to the point of the fact that these others, let's just say, who don't fit the prototypical template of the masses, who are coming in having remembrances of reality beyond the construct, they
Hmm.
exist as well. And to your point, perhaps they've always been coming here. I do have a sense that they may be coming in greater numbers. Perhaps. I don't know for sure.
Yeah,
But we are in some,
yeah.
yeah, in some
Hmm.
transitional. Let's, speaking of transition, I have so many things that I'm not going to get to today, because this conversation, as I always pray, let it take on a life of its own and let it go where it needs to go. And I'm loving the way this conversation is going. But I want to spend a little bit more time, Sonia, really homing in on the simulation. And again, there's a label right there for you, and you could say simulation and maybe get 2, 3, maybe 10 different versions from in terms of definitions of what that means. But if assuming that simulation is some sort of an artificial construct that we are living in,
And what is
that's
artificial?
oh, okay, now stop
I,
right there.
you
You're gonna
know,
take me to inorganic. I'm going to use that.
God.
Let's assume, because that's how a lot of people feel it is, at least at one level, I want to
Okay.
talk about afterlife environments, and even in between life state, of which the late Dr. Michael Newton researched at great length. Does a simulation, in your estimation, exist there as well? And I know that's a loaded question. You're going to have a boatload to tell me on that. So, what are
Oh
your thoughts
gosh, I
about that?
am.
How far does
Is this
this?
simulation exist? Okay, well, again, if we let's just go back to this idea, because people's minds have got to lock into a thing, right? So when we say simulation, we're saying is a simulation there as well. Let's again go back to what we said about the idea of a simulation. It doesn't matter whatever other people want to make of it. The fact is that we can all agree that we must be in some experience that's allowing us to have a collectively similar experience, even though we may be different in many ways. There is a similar experience, and this experience, this simulation experience that we're talking about, is the human experience.
Okay.
Again, it's set up, designed in a certain way to accommodate a certain kind of life form, life experience. So simulation could exist in many other places based on that definition. It's simply always going to be based on a particular concept. The
I see.
universe is a simulation. The planet is a simulation. We're not even, we're a simulation. And we could go to the fact that everything is real and not real. Everything, it's a paradox. Everything is
Mm-hmm.
and it isn't. If we could wrap our minds around that, then need to just find this thing and make it that. All you need to know and realize is that we are part of an experience, an experience that we call the human experience, and it is happening in a space that might not necessarily have walls that you know of, but it is an energetic space, like a sphere, within which a particular kind of experience is happening, and it is the human experience here and all the stuff that's involved with the human experience. Now, let's touch real quickly then on when I talk about the default program. When I'm talking about the default program, I'm talking about the fact that this particular simulation for this particular human experience, this version of the human experience as we know it to be, is operating based on a default set of programs, default set of should I say, protocols. That default set of protocols could be looked at as the concept, the belief system that some may have. We might see it as everyone, but I'll talk about that real quickly in a second, may have, and it is our birth to death concept. Just the idea that we're born and the idea that we die and everything else that happens in between. All right? So something is, you're hooked up to something that is keeping track of the number of cycles that you are here on the planet as you know it to be in this physical body. Every time you have a birthday, you hit 1 cycle, 2 cycles, 20 cycles,
I'm following
50,
you.
100 cycles, right? So something is tracking those cycles. Now, in that tracking of those cycles, in you as an individual, what's happening with people? Their body starts to age. They start, you start preparing the idea of that, the fact that you're going to die, right? So your brain is all networked into this, what I call a default system. And that default system just keeps the human race going. Its job is to ensure that the game stays alive. Now, the default system, when human beings on a collective level are not expanding or evolving into each maybe new level of consciousness, each level of awareness. When I say consciousness, I'm going to look at expansive awareness. When that is not happening on a bigger scale, then that default program, which is where we get the these cycles, the 26,000 year cycle, and then, okay, let's jump to the 104,000 year cycle that everybody talks about, the great cycle of change. This is a default program. That means that this experience, this version, is set for some particular changes, like click, move up the next level, click, move up the next level, move them up to each next level, because most people are not moving up on a individual scale of expansion like we're talking about. So since everything must graduate and evolve to each next level, there's a default system, like a I don't know, whatever, I can't think of a system right now, some sort of mechanism that is keeping, collectively moving us to each next stage.
School. Look at the education system as a very tangible example, right?
From like the Stone Age, we went from sage, you discovering fire, to this, to that. Something is causing human beings to go through these various cycles. So, all right, so we get that. Now, however, the way the system is set up, it is not set up to trap you like most people think, like you can't get out of it. No, it does what it does when the human being is asleep. That is a sleeping automated human that is working with that default program, is keeping that system going. When the individual starts to awaken on a more profound level, you start moving off of that default program.
Grid, really? That grid, yeah.
I mean, I can go into this scientifically. I cannot do it here. I would not try to do it here.
You only have 5 minutes. You're going to.
I'm just giving.
She's wound up, folks. I got to tell you. Wow, we should have made this a 2 hour. But go ahead.
This is So this is what we talk about. This is what I talk about in when we do retreats, workshops, so on, is
Yeah,
to get into that. And when people understand more of the science of it, it's not a woo-woo thing. It's none of that.
not at
You
all.
get
Yeah,
it why this happens.
right.
So that's what I'm saying. So the default program lets you out of that. You start to don't not need the default program anymore because you're expanding on your own. You are moving back into you're turning on the brain, or the brain is always turned on, but you
Right.
are allowing your awareness to expand to a level where your brain starts to remove the filters that it's got
Absolutely.
from you seeing, more and experiencing more of what is possible.
Oh, wow. So here's how I would distill this, folks. The default program is not the enemy. The default program is an opportunity to realize all that is.
Thank
Everything is.
you.
How's
Hmm.
that?
Absolutely.
I'm trying to
Absolutely.
figure out how we can boil this down. As
Hmm.
always, Sonia Barrett, you're leaving people with much to think about. Cliffhanger, I got to tell you, this is some deep stuff and necessary. This is, I have to tell you, everything, you brought in some new concepts for me, or so different, a slightly different way of looking at some things here. But I think this is absolutely worth pondering. We're going to have to wind down. I'm looking at this clock. I cannot believe we're over, but it was well worth it. And I can't imagine that this would be the last time we have this conversation. So I want to end with you telling us what's going on. What are you going to be giving any talks elaborating on this? I know you've done many in the past, but do you have any upcoming where you'll be going into
I don't
this?
know when this is going to air, but on New York, I'm going to be doing a workshop in New York on June 2nd,
Great.
and it's moving into your superhuman. Well, I can't remember. Anyway, moving into your superhuman self. But anyway, so we're going to be talking about, yes, many of
Excellent.
these topics, and that's in New York, June 2nd,
Do
and
you
they
have
can
a
go to the
link?
website.
Okay.
It's just go to therealsoniabarrett.com. It's on the homepage. You'll see where, yeah, that's there, and you can sign up for the workshop in New York. And I'm going to be at a bunch of other conferences, New Mexico, the Human Origins Conference in New Mexico this in October, I believe,
Hmm.
and Sedona, another conference in September. But they're all on the realsoniabarrett.com
Excellent.
website.
We'll make sure to have. I think I'm going to dig in and get the links to the specific events that are relevant to this very very multi-dimensional talk. I would say. Again, my audience knows I love to let this go where it will be most useful for those who are the recipients of the conversation. Those of you listening on the other end. So, I do thank you for this insight. God knows where she got it from, folks, but I'm glad she brought it here. It's needed and it's just so appreciated. So I thank you so much.
Thank you,
And I,
Alexis. Thank you, everyone, as well.
yeah, love talking to you. And we will have you back real soon, I promise. All
Oh,
right.
awesome.
All right, everyone. We'll talk to you soon. Take good care. Everything is and isn't. This is the paradox. And as an individual with choice, we can decide where we live, move, and have our being within this paradox. We may be in it, but not of it. We are both products of the simulation and creators of it. Many are all too willing to keep it alive, but some are intent in creating their own program and designing their own life. That, to me, is true evolution. Be sure to visit Sonia's great website at therealsoniabarrett.com to learn more about where she'll be speaking about this fascinating subject and to pick up a copy of her book, The Holographic Canvas, The Fusing of Mind and Matter. Thanks as always for tuning in to Higher Journeys Radio. Until next time, I'm your host, Alexis Brooks.